And I would ask that during roll call, everyone also verify your address location during roll. And Mr. Sweet, would you now take the roll?
Yes. Dr. Paris.
Present.
Dr. Adams.
Present.
Raphael Sweet is present. Ms. Cruz.
Present. Are you kidding?
You have to speak them loud here.
Oh, present.
Dr. Daniels.
His addresses.
Present, 1165 Park Avenue, San Jose, California.
And Dr. Sandino.
Present 28000 Rancho Parkway in Lake Forest, California.
And let me go back. Dr. Paris present at 3455 Knighton Road, Redding, California, 96001.
And Dr. Adams is at 101 Andrick Street in Sonoma, California, 95476. And nobody from the public is present at this time.
And I, Raphael Sweet, am at 4100 West Alameda Avenue, 3rd floor, Burbank, California. No one from the public is present.
I'm trying to find our address.
And then Ms. Cruz is present here at the DCA headquarters building in the Ruby Room at 1747 North Market Boulevard in Sacramento, California, 95834.
Dr. Paris in Redding, California, no public present. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sweet. So a few things before we move to agenda item number 2. We are going to table it just for the timing of the meeting and for the public. We are going to table agenda item 6, and we'll catch up on those meeting minutes in the spring, along with today's meeting minutes. Agenda item 10, our Council on Chiropractic Education presentation is scheduled for 11:15. And then agenda item 11 is scheduled for 1:15. And so we may request to go out of order and take 1 or 2 committee reports immediately after agenda item 9, the executive officer report, if we have some extra time there. And we're also going to incorporate 2 15-minute breaks a 15-minute break in the morning, and assure everyone a 45-minute lunch and a 15-minute break in the afternoon. And we have to be mindful to comply with state labor laws and for our staff and the public to be able to get a break from these full day meetings. The plan is to tentatively take a break sometime between 10:15, 10:30, attempt to do the lunch 45 minutes from 12:30 to 1:15, and then take our final 15-minute break before our closed session. And that's all I have for the updates there. Moderator, can we move to agenda item number 2, public comment for items not on the agenda?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to enable public comment on items not on the agenda. If you would like to suggest or mention an item not on the agenda, you can either look for the hand icon, typically at the bottom of your WebEx screen, and click that to raise your hand, or you can click on the question mark icon, typically at the lower right of your WebEx screen, and type the word comment in that text box and click send. Our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning. Are there any comments on items that are not on the agenda? I do see a request for comment from our call-in user. Just to let you know, call-in user, I'm going to send you a request to unmute, and you can press *6 to unmute yourself. There you go, you're unmuted.
Hello, this is Falcon, Vermont student from Life West. I know there's an agenda item about a discussion for the program at Life West, but this request is something else. I'd like to ask for the board to directly inquire to the involved administrators involved with a clinic order, because I think it's mislabeled. Well, I'm actually sure it's mislabeled. It has to do with the difference between CPT 99211 and CPT 99213, because one says a doctor was present for an office visit but did not perform any doctor-tiered order nor made any doctor-tiered diagnosis, was just present. The other one says that the doctor made a doctor-tiered order and made a doctor-tiered diagnosis and a doctor-tiered mark. The mislabel that actually happened was a doctor-tiered order that happened, but the administrators marked it as if the doctor didn't make a mark and therefore was ultimately not present and insignificant. So I'd like to ask the board to directly inquire about that mislabel, because potentially I think that's unconstitutional, as it is in violation to HIPAA rights. I hope to discuss this further in the Life West section, thing number 11, in today's agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Appreciate that.
And I do not see any other requests for comment online. So as stated, I will go ahead and check with the in-person locations to make sure that if anyone has any comments requested. Anyone in Burbank?
No.
Thank you. Anyone in San Jose?
No public comment here.
Thank you. Anything in Lake Forest?
No public comment.
Thank you. Anyone in Sonoma? Thank you. Anyone in Reading?
No public comment.
Thank you. And anyone in person in the Ruby Room?
No public comment.
Thank you very much. Shall I close this agenda item?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to agenda item number 3, the board chair's report. Before I get started with that, I wanted to welcome our newest board member, Dr. Sandino. And Dr. Sandino, if you would like, I would like to allow you some time to introduce yourself and say hello to the board, the staff, and the public.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Pears. My name is Dr. Claudia Sandino. First of all, I wanted to thank everybody for the great support that I've had in the past few months for some personal items. That's why I was not at the meeting in October. I do apologize about that, but I appreciate all the support. My background is I went to chiropractic college at Life West in Northern California. Had the pleasure of working with Dr. Adams there on the student body. He was our fearless president leader and I was a vice president. So that was fun working together for the students, always trying to get the best for chiropractic for our group. And we had a great time there. I continued in the student body with different organizations, always like to get involved. And I actually practiced in Spain for 15 years, where I was involved with the initiation of the 2 universities there. One of the first 100 chiropractors in Spain, which was an interesting feat that I didn't realize how important it was till now when you reflect back on things. Because now there's 2 universities there with graduating chiropractors, and it's amazing. So I always like to get involved politically, helping, serving our profession in the best way. I'm honored to be on this board to do that for the state of California. I met Dr. Daniels in our course as a with clinical neuroscience at the Carrick Institution. So we went through that together. So I know some of the board members closely, and I look forward to working with them again in this capacity. And I've had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Paris many times, and thank you for all your support. And let's see, the other background, my main focus in chiropractic when I was in Spain and when I came back to California was with the development of children during pregnancy, the adjusting pregnant women and children development. So I have that niche, if you will say, as my background and love and passion for kids and sports. In Spain, I worked with a lot of soccer teams since that was a big sport there. And my son played sports. So I continue doing that here in California in a different level here in Orange County. And that's pretty much the gist of it. If there's any questions at any time, feel free to contact me. I'm open to communicate with anyone and answer any questions. But thank you for this honor to be with you. And I hope to help the chiropractic profession in the best capacity that I can. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sandino, and a heartfelt welcome. And we're happy to have you here. Great to see you here. We're really inching close to a full board, and so happy to have you here. And thank you for that. Well, so getting to the board chair report, I really just want to emphasize again, I feel like this is maybe a bit, I feel like I say the same thing sometimes, but I think it's because it's what should be said and what should be emphasized. And, I think personally, it's a heartfelt thank you to all of the board members. In my view, there's been a dedication to the work of this board and the amount of the volume of work that we've taken on and that continues and that we have done um, it's more than I think I had experienced previously, and I think it's because of the teamwork and also because of having great team members and board members and staff members and an executive officer that continually kind of allows us to push this forward. And I think it also has to do with having the public be involved in outreach to our stakeholders and being able to completely move all of this forward with the confidence that we've done the outreach and we've engaged stakeholders and we've looked at every angle and every opinion. And I like to call it a deep dive. And I think we've done that in every committee and we've considered everyone's thoughts and consideration. So just to kind of flash back on 2023, we had 5 board meetings. We had 3 enforcement committee meetings. Governmental Public Affairs met 4 times. Licensing committee met 3 times. We had 2 continuing education committee meetings. And in the midst of all of that, we continued our outreach. And so Dr. Adams has done some outreach and presentation on ethics to licensees in November. And Ms. Walker and I had participated in a Cal Cairo Fall Conference, and we actually had a BCE booth, and we shared that with the American Chiropractic Association. And it was a really nice opportunity to do outreach and just be present amongst our licensees and other stakeholders in continuing education. And I hope we can continue that into the future. I think it's very fruitful, and I think we get an opportunity to answer and to deal with a lot of questions and issues for licensees before they become problems. So I hope we can continue to do that. I know it was well received by not just the Cal Cairo State Association, but a lot of the licensees there. We met a lot of licensees who were interested in helping us with our subject matter expert and through our enforcement committee. And so I hope we can continue that. Dr. Daniels, I can't say enough about the engagement and discussions out of the licensing committees and with academic leaders and with CCE. I think really the work that Dr. Daniels has done there has led to kind of the bulk of the agenda here today, which is really engaging with CCE and having Dr. Little here again from the Council on Chiropractic Education. I hope we can continue that as kind of an annual update for the board, and then having the college presidents on today. So thank you very much. I think that committee is the deepest of the deep dives that we need in these issues. So can't say thank you enough there. I, the Government and Public Affairs Committee has, in my eyes, has done more work this year than I've seen, really put on their agendas for a long time. And so I really have to, say thank you to Ms. Cruz and Mr. Sweet. I'm especially appreciative. I think they've done a really great work in that committee, aligning that committee with the strategic plan objectives of the BCE. And I think that's really going to continue to help us as we move forward. And they've done a really great job connecting, those two things. And so we can really stay focused and move forward. And I think that the thing also too that I really appreciate about the work that they've done is I really feel like that's created a strong connection between the staff and the board, and that's really what makes us the true large team that we are at the BCE. Um, so thank you to everyone. I hope that we actually get to a full board at some time, and I hope that we continue all the work that we've done. I know it's been a busy year, but I hope that we do it again. I hope that this year circles back and we move forward all the regulatory packages, and that we have new things coming up. And I even I noticed I'm the low on the totem pole as a committee chair of CE for at least for meetings. There was a lot of work there, but so I will try and lead the way by having probably a handful more of continuing education meetings. I'm a little competitive that way, so no, but so thank you to everyone. Appreciate you all, and that's all I have. Thank you, moderator. Can we please open this agenda item for public comment?
Certainly.
And
We've
Dr.
opened. Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Oh, just quickly, thank you, moderator. Just to make a minor adjustment to the way that we're going to handle public comment today, seeing that there's no members of the public at any of our in-person teleconference locations. We're going to, when we call for public comment, the moderator will prompt the board if there's any calls for in-person public comment at your meeting locations. If so, please speak up. If not, and hearing none, we'll then move to the public comment via the WebEx connection, but we won't call individually at each location if there's public comment, seeing as how at this point we don't have any in-person participants. So thank you. Go ahead, moderator.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So are there any, I'll take that as no in-person comments. Is that correct for all our satellite locations? All right, I see heads nodding. Thank you. So if someone from the public on WebEx would like to make a comment, you can either click on the hand icon to raise your hand. You can click on the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box that appears, and click send. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker should speak only once per agenda item. They will have 3 minutes total with a 15-second warning. Are there any comments on the report from the board president? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving to agenda item number 4, election of board officers for 2024. And our board legal counsel, Sabina Knight, will preside over the election process. Sabina, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I'm so sorry about my voice. I'm recovering from losing it. So it's really me, I promise. I have tea and cough drops. I'm not sick. I just sound terrible. So I'm sorry. I have to take a lot of sips to keep going. Okay, so we are here. It's 2024, January, and we are ready to do our officer elections. So let's start with, excuse me, let's start with the position of president. Do we have any nominations?
I believe we had already nominated Dr. Paris or new nominations. Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, any and all. I'm willing to hear them all. Besides Dr. Paris, of course. And as a reminder, I was not at your October meeting, so I was not present. I'm not sure who exactly was nominated. All right, and Dr. Paris, I'm assuming you accepted that nomination.
I did. Thank you.
Wonderful. And so do we have any additional board comments or on the nomination? Dr. Paris, would you like to make a statement before we do the actual roll call vote?
I would just, I think I stated, I spent some extra time in the board chair report, and I think that would reflect my feelings and comments as to how the last year has gone. Thank you.
Wonderful. And can we check in for public comment on Dr. Paris as the president before we do a vote?
Certainly. Are there any in-person comments from any location, including DCA? Shaking heads. Take that as a no. If anyone from WebEx would like to make a comment on the nomination for board president, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or you may hit the question mark icon, type the word comment, and click send. Any comments on the role of president? I do not see any comments. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's go ahead with a roll call vote for Dr. Paris as president.
Would you like me to conduct that?
Yes, please. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Dr. Paris?
I would accept that, yes.
Dr. Adams?
Yes.
Raphael Sweet, yes. Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Dr. Daniels?
Yes.
And Dr. Sandino?
Yes.
Motion carried. Congratulations, Dr. Paris.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And then we'll move on to vice president. And I hear that Dr. Adams was nominated. Do we hear any additional nominations? All right. Dr. Adams, did you want to say anything before we go out for public comment and take our vote?
I'm excited to continue to serve on the board and serve in this capacity, and I'm excited for 2024 and what we can accomplish this year as well. Thank you.
Awesome. And can we check in for our public comment on the before the vote for Dr. Adams as vice president?
Certainly. Are there any in-person comments from any of our in-person locations? Thank you. If anyone on WebEx would like to make a comment on the vice president role and nomination, you can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment, and click send. You can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Any comments on the vice president nomination? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Great. And Mr. Sweet, would you do the vote, please?
Yes. Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Dr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Sweet is yes. Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Dr. Daniels?
Yes.
And Dr. Sandino?
Yes.
Great. Motion carries. Congratulations, Dr. Adams.
Thank you.
And last but not least, the secretary, and I hear Ms. Cruz, sorry, Ms. Cruz is nominated. Is there any additional nominations? And hearing none, Ms. Cruz, would you like to make a statement before I go out for public comment and do our vote?
Sure. Definitely honored to be considered. And as I enter this position, I know what's it called? Mr. Sweet has left big shoes for me to fill.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, let's check in for public comment on Ms. Cruz's nomination as a secretary.
Thank you. Are there any in-person comments at any of our in-person locations? All right, thank you. And if you are attending via WebEx, if you've got any comments on the secretary nomination, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on the secretary nomination? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Sweet, would you do the honors?
Dr. Paris,
Yes.
Dr. Adams,
Yes.
Raphael Sweet, yes. Ms. Cruz,
Yes.
Dr. Daniels,
Yes.
Dr. Sandino,
Yes.
Motion carried. Congratulations, Ms. Cruz. Well, congratulations. Thank you so much, everybody. And I'm so sorry again for my voice, but hopefully next time we see each other, it'll be way better.
Thank you,
Turn it up.
Sabina.
Yeah. Turn it over to you.
Appreciate that. Now, let me just ask a point of order. Should we go back to public comment, just final before we close the agenda item?
No, not necessary. We took a public comment for each of the motions.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Moving to agenda item number 5. Congratulations, everyone, and thank you all for that. Okay, we're going to get a Department of Consumer Affairs report and update. And I would like to welcome Judy Bucciarelli. I hope I got that right. I think I got it right last time. And so welcome, and she will provide us with a report and update on the Department of Consumer Affairs. The floor is yours.
Okay. My mic. Yeah. Hi, good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning. Again, my name is Judy Bucciarelli from the Department of Consumer Affairs, Board and Bureau Relations, and I thank you for the opportunity to join you again today. The DEI Steering Committee held its quarterly meeting on December 15th. The committee reviewed a draft DEI intranet page that is currently being developed, re-elected its chairperson and vice chairperson for 2024, and discussed DEI training as it remains a committee priority. Once operational, the DEI intranet page will provide all DCA employees with information and resources, including DEI hiring principles, which will serve as a guide for those involved in the hiring process. The DEI Steering Committee would like to continue to learn and showcase the DEI activities of DCA's boards and bureaus. If your board has DEI efforts to share, please send them to DCA Board and Bureau Relations. DCA continues to support DCA boards and bureaus in expanding culturally competent communications and promoting the importance of meeting the needs of all California consumers, licensees, and applicants. The latest issue of DCA's Consumer Connection magazine includes articles with information important to consumers, including a feature cover story translated into 3 languages to further the reach of this information. The magazine is available on the DCA homepage, and printed copies of the magazine are also available. If you would like printed copies, please email your request to consumerconnection@dca.ca.gov. Next, I have an update on the budget current year expenditure freeze. The Department of Finance issued a budget letter that directs all agencies and departments under the direct authority of the governor to take immediate action to reduce current year expenditures. Given the fiscal outlook, the state of California anticipates a significant general fund budget deficit in fiscal years 2023 and 2024, 24 and 25, which will require all state entities to take immediate measures to ensure more prudent spending. Except for time-sensitive, emergency-related, mission-critical, or information security needs, immediate actions include the cancellation of all non-essential travel, such as participation in seminars, conferences, and training both in-state and out-of-state. Additionally, programs shall reevaluate expenses related to current IT projects. Boards should review all spending and determine where savings can be realized. In addition, it is important that boards, when planning meetings, ensure they are conducting a cost analysis to determine the best option for the state. And please remember that when traveling, you need to use all forms of transportation and hotel accommodations that are the most economical to the state. DCA has provided guidance, and it is imperative that we all work together to find savings. My next topic will be required board member training reminders and information regarding Form 700, Statement of Economic Interest. In this portion of my update, I'll be referencing several email addresses, and I'll provide those to Ms. Walker, and she can get those to you if you happen to not get them jotted down. California law requires all DCA board members to complete the following. Form 700, Statement of Economic Interest. This form must be filed within 30 days of assuming or leaving your appointment and annually on or before April 1st, 2024. This year's annual filing period covers the prior calendar year, January 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2023. The deadline for filing is Monday, April 1st, 2024. To ensure compliance, DCA requests that Form 700 filers complete e-filing by Friday, March 15th, 2024. You should have recently received an email from NetFile with instructions on how to file your annual Form 700. If you have any questions or would like more information, please contact Melissa Gear at melissagear@dca.ca.gov. The next is a board member orientation training update. This training must be completed within 1 year of appointment and reappointment to the board. BMOT is an all-day training, and for 2024, it is being offered on March 27th, June 18th, and October 22nd. Due to the budget letter previously mentioned and to save costs, all BMOT training will be virtual in 2024. Please sign up for the first available date to be compliant. Members can sign up using DCA's learning management system. Next is ethics training. This training must be completed by board members within the first 6 months of appointment and repeated every 2 years throughout their term on the board. The training is available on the Department of Justice website or upon request from Board and Bureau Relations. Next is sexual harassment prevention training. This training must be completed every 2 years. The training is online, interactive, and can be completed at your convenience via the learning management system. All members must complete the 2-hour supervisory training. Lastly is defensive driver training. This training is required at least once every 4 years is online, interactive, and can be completed at your convenience. Course enrollments are now submitted through Department of General Services Learning Management System pathways. You may contact DGS University at dgs.ca.gov for more information. Upon completion of required trainings, please provide copies of completion certificates to your executive officer and to DCA at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov. The sexual harassment prevention training courses are available in the department's learning management system. If board members need assistance accessing LMS or need additional information about any of these trainings, please contact your board's liaison or DCA Board and Bureau Relations at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov. If you need to know if you've completed your required training courses, please reach out to Board and Bureau Relations. Looking ahead, DCA invites presidents and vice presidents to our President's Training on February 22nd, 2024 from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. This virtual 2.5-hour training will outline the role of a board president, including understanding the scope of their role, managing board members, communicating with the executive officer, and performing administrative duties. This training not only provides valuable information from DCA staff, but will also have a panel of prior members who have held executive positions on a board. Their knowledge and expertise will help sort through the significant role of a president and vice president, and they will also be available for a question and answer time. This training is not only for members who are new to the role of president or vice president, but also for those who have served in one of these roles for a year or more. Learning from each other is a large part of this training, and we look forward to seeing all board presidents and vice presidents on February 22nd. More information for this training will be available soon. In closing, the BBR team would like to thank the members and board staff for their hard work and partnership over the past year. We look forward to 2024 and all of the great work that lies ahead. We thank you for your continued service and for protecting the consumers of California. I appreciate your time this morning, and I'll hand it back to Dr. Paris and be happy to take any questions from the board.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Bucciarelli. Am I getting that correct?
You're welcome.
Thank
You are. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Well, let me open this for any questions for you or discussion by the board. Board members, feel free to jump in if you have any questions or discussion. Okay. Hearing none, let's open this agenda item number 5 for public comment.
Thank you. Are there any public comments from in-person attendees in any of our locations? I'll take that as a no. Thank you. For those attending via WebEx, if you would like to make a comment on the DCA report, you can look for the question mark icon and click that, type the word comment and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning, and we ask speakers to speak only once per agenda item. Any comments on the DCA report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you again, Ms. Bucciarelli. Moving to, we're going to move to agenda item number 7. Again, we are going to table agenda item 6, which was the review and possible approval of the July 20th, 2023 and October 19, 2023 board meeting minutes. So we'll table that agenda item and move to agenda item number 7. Review and possible ratification of approved Doctor of Chiropractic license applications. Let me first open this for any questions or discussions by the board members.
Motion to approve the chiropractic license applications.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr.
Daniels.
Daniels. Thank you. Is there any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, moderator, would you please open this agenda item for public comment?
Certainly. If anyone has any comments on the agenda item, you may look for the question mark icon and click that, type the word comment and click send, or you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Any comments on agenda item 7? I do not see any requests for comment. My apologies. My apologies. Are there any in-person comments from any of our in-person locations? No? All right, thank you. And we did not get any comments from the online. So shall I close that public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll for the vote on the motion?
Yes. Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Dr. Adams?
Yes.
Raphael Sweet, yes. Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Dr. Daniels?
Yes.
Dr. Sandino?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Welcome to all of our new licensees. Moving to agenda item number 8. Review and possible ratification of approved continuing education provider applications. Let me open it up for questions or discussion from the board.
I motion to approve the applications for continuing education providers.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Sandino. Thank you, Dr. Adams. Is there any further discussion from the board? Hearing none. Moderator, would you please open agenda item number 8 for public comment?
Thank you. If there are any comments for agenda item 8, you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send, or you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, and call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. While we're giving people time to locate that, are there any in-person comments from any of our in-person locations? Thank you. And I do not see any requests for comment from WebEx attendees. Shall I close public comment?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll for the vote on the motion?
Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Dr. Adams?
Yes.
Raphael Sweet, yes. Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Dr. Daniels?
Yes.
Dr. Sandino?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Moving to agenda item number 9. Our executive officers report and updates, and I would turn the floor over to Ms. Walker.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Paris. And I just want to mention, I just got word from Dr. Little that he's available actually beginning at 10 a.m. to start his presentation rather than 11:15. So as a point of order, would you like me to begin with part of my report and then take a break and then go to the CCE presentation. I don't want to keep him waiting while I do my report.
Are you referring to taking a 15-minute break and Dr. Little comes on at 10:15?
Correct, yeah.
I'm okay with that. Any objections from any of the board members? Okay, let's have you start and then we'll take a break at 10 and we'll get Dr. Little on at 10:15.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm going to start with just highlighting a few items today. The first of which is board meetings. So at the October meeting, we had scheduled some dates for all of our quarterly board meetings for 2024. We're unable to get legal coverage for the dates that were originally identified for the April meeting. So staff had sent out a poll trying to find some dates, some alternative dates in April. Those weren't quite working. So I'm now proposing potentially having that meeting on Thursday, March 28th and Friday, March 29th. The goal is to be able to hold the meeting in San Jose in person, but in light of the budget letter and some of its implications, our backup plan, if we can't get approval for an in-person meeting, would be to conduct that meeting on those dates, but via teleconference like we're doing here today. So just throwing that out there, I'll follow up with an email with board members just to confirm availability for that date. Wanted to also highlight a bit on legislation. We discussed at length the implementation of 2023 legislation at our last meeting. There's not much new for me to report there other than that DCA has followed through on their implementation of the license portability for service members and their spouses as required by Senate Bill 143. So that process is live and available to everyone. There's also a public website with a plethora of information for service members and their spouses to be able to navigate that process, not only for the chiropractic board, but for any of the DCA programs. And then they've also established a method for us to receive and process the requests for confidential name and gender changes under Senate Bill 372. That was recently implemented as that bill became effective at the beginning of the year. We don't anticipate a very high volume of those requests for our programs. So beyond having that process in place, we potentially may update a few of our forms, but we're not planning to have any additional like IT support or building any information systems around that process just due to the low volume. The cost benefit analysis just isn't there. So for the most part, both of those bills are considered to be fully implemented as of the beginning of the year. Next Friday, January 19th, is going to be the deadline for committees to hear and report to the floor any bills that were introduced in their House in 2023. And it's also the deadline for submission of bill requests to the Office of Legislative Counsel. Another upcoming deadline is January 31st, which is the last day for each House to pass bills that were introduced in that House last year. Of mind with these is closely tracking Assembly Bill 765. That one's currently in Assembly Appropriations. It has to get out of that committee by next Friday or it's considered dead, and it needs to pass through the Assembly by January 31st or it's considered dead. We've had some communications with the Naturopathic Medical Board as they share this board's same concerns. So we're closely watching. We're going to partner on that if and when it's taken up at either the committee or the floor level. Another key deadline for us as we look at the resumption of the legislative cycle is February 16th. Is our last day for any new bills to be introduced for this session. From some discussions that we've had with stakeholders, there is a potential for a couple bills that could directly affect BCE. So we're going to continue to closely monitor all the bills that are being introduced, sift through those, and then determine if there's any that affect the board. We'll be bringing those forward first to the Government and Public Affairs Committee at their next meeting for some discussion and development of potential recommendations for the board, and then bringing them forward to the board at the spring meeting so you can take an official position as we get into the committee discussions later in the spring. I also wanted to highlight, just briefly mention the fact that our occupational analysis survey is now live. Last week, DCA's Office of Professional Examination Services sent postcards and email addresses to all active California licensees, inviting them to participate in this important survey. So we're strongly encouraging that all licensees do take the time and participate in that survey, which is going to be available through Friday, January 26th. I also wanted to highlight just a few personnel updates. So within the last month, we conducted interviews for our enforcement analyst and special investigator positions. We are just awaiting final approval from HR for our selection for that enforcement analyst position. And then we're conducting some reference checks for the person we've identified as our top special investigator candidate. So we hope to have some HR approval to be able to make a conditional offer for the special investigator position in the coming weeks. Also, I have to announce that Austin Maha, our administrative technician who's currently handling our front desk activities, he's actually accepted a transfer position with CAL FIRE. So his last day with BCE is going to be upcoming on January 30th. We've submitted a recruitment package to HR to advertise and refill his position. And then we've made plans to redirect our enforcement technician to that desk to cover the duties in any gap between his departure and hiring a new candidate. I also wanted to just briefly highlight some of the program statistics that are within the EO report. So our licensing and CE committee has continued, managing and processing their application workload and moving it forward. We're still seeing the same trends that we've been seeing, especially around when we're looking at the number of licenses that are being issued. It's a healthy amount. We're continuing to receive a good amount of DC applications from recent graduates, and they've largely adopted the Connect system, so we're also happy to see that. Most of them are actually applying for licensure electronically rather than using a paper process. And we've also continued to see that sustained higher level of new satellite location applications, largely attributing that to just the increase in availability of and interest of having multiple QME examination locations, as well as just licensees returning to work post-pandemic and expanding their availability of locations. And then also moving to enforcement, we're really, as of last week, our pending number of complaints was down to 467. Tammy and I have been putting quite a bit of effort into focusing with staff to kind of address the backlog of pending complaints with a few goals. First of which is to be able to get it down to under 400 by this spring, followed by getting it below 300 by the end of this fiscal year. Last month, I provided a brief presentation on some enhancements that we've been making to our enforcement processes to help us get to having really a 90-day investigation standard. And really the hurdle to getting there today is addressing that backlog in complaints. So going to be doing quite a bit of work here in the first half of 2024 to get us down to a more sustainable level of complaints so that we can then implement those enhancements to our desk investigation processes and implement those improved timeframes. I also wanted to highlight, so within the meeting materials, we included DCA's handout with an overview of the four main phases of the regulation process. We kind of want to standardize and start using that type of terminology when we're talking about the different regulations, just because we are managing so many. We have a total of 20 officially that we're tracking, although that number is actually closer to about 22 or 23 when we incorporate some of the really very early conceptual discussions that we're having at the licensing committee that will likely come forward as future regulations as well. So we're looking at a workload of actually closer to about 23 regulations. We have 8 regulatory packages that right now are in the production phase. All of those have been drafted except for that section 100 cleanup on our fees. So we're now working with our reg council to get those 7 major packages finalized, approved through the DCA director and agency with a goal of filing them with the Office of Administrative Law this spring in March and April, as outlined in the meeting materials, and out to public comment. Where that timeline is going to then be driven beyond that is after we get them out to public comment, what the board should expect is that this spring we'll bring a discussion of any public comments we receive on those packages forward at committee meetings for the committee to review the public comments, develop recommended responses to those public comments, and determine whether any additional modifications need to be made to the text so that they can then bring those recommendations forward to the full board in July to address those public comments, proceed with the rest of the regulatory process, and be able to close these out at the end of 2024. We're also anticipating shortly behind that, we're anticipating having about 5 to 6 proposals potentially that could be ready for the board's approval of text at the spring meeting. And what that would entail is that would move us with about 6 more packages into the production phase as those 7 that I had just mentioned move to initial filing. So then we would be looking at the same time frame, about 1 quarter to 6 months behind. So we would move about 5 more, and then we'd be looking at in fall of 2024 getting those out for notice and public comment, and then adoption and effectiveness of those regulations in about mid-2025. So really, when it comes to regulations, the board's aware about the last 15 months, the primary focus has been on that concept development phase. Our next 3 months heavily focused is going to be on production and initial filings. And then right about, when we get to about late spring, summer, we're going to return to a kind of a healthy balance of both. So we'll have a significant number of packages that are making their way through the OAL approval process, but then we're also going to have a much more healthy level of about 10 proposals that we're considering at the concept phase. I think we're right at about 10 o'clock, so I'm going to conclude that portion of my update. And actually, that's good timing because the only other item I have to discuss with the board has to do with the budget. So I'd like to answer any questions on that portion, and then we can take a break, do the CCE presentation, and then I can return to the budget.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Are there any questions or discussion from the board on that portion of the executive officer's report? Hearing none, because we're going to change to another agenda item and then circle back to this. Moderator, can we please
Dr.
open
Paris?
this? Yes,
I apologize. I just had one quick follow-up question with
please.
Ms. Walker. Ms. Walker, this real quick, just in relationship to item 5, I've had some discussions with chiropractors and with some providers relative to item 5 and the continuing education requirements. This seems to keep getting pushed back a little bit, and I'm curious, how certain are we that this will go to the OAL in March of this year?
We're very certain. So the delays with that package had to do with the fact that we had to summarize about 7 to 8 years of discussion on the topic and gather all that information that has to be included in the regulation package. We've gone through that effort, so now it's just merely getting the current proposal, which I think is a very good proposal, approved through the director and agency so that we can go out for notice and public comment. So the lion's share of the work is complete. It's just a matter of getting the 2 levels of approval so we can file initially with OAL.
Well, just one of my concerns is that I've heard feedback that there are providers and chiropractors that are confused about the access to video teleconferencing considered as live, which has not been approved yet, that they're being told that they will. So we just might want to be aware that there might be some licensees that are confused about that principle. And when you're dealing with your CE, what do they call those again? When you your CE audits of chiropractors, that some are under the impression that video conferencing is approved as of January 1st of this year, which it's not.
Thank you. Yeah, and we're working on developing regular updates to CE providers and licensees so we can share additional information. And also just when we're conducting audits, we take it from an educational standpoint. So really, especially if it's a first offense or if there's any confusion there, we do take it from just wanting to educate the licensee and ensure compliance, not to be overly punitive or to catch them if they've misunderstood a specific requirement.
Thank you.
Can I add a quick comment to that? And Ms. Walker and staff, maybe this is an opportunity to utilize our social media channels to address this kind of known confusion, including our web page.
Yes, thank you.
And I just had one more thing in agreement with Dr. Adams and Dr. Paris. I'm just wondering if, I think the process you've laid out very well. I still think it can be confusing to the stakeholders as to why it appears to be taking so long or pushed back. So if there's any, additional information of, like your explanation of summarizing the last 7-8 years of discussion is, very enlightening of, that makes sense of why it's taking so long. So I just think that if there's anything else additional for the stakeholders so that there's more transparency so they understand kind of the process, I think would be great. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Moderator, can we go to public comment for this portion of agenda item 9?
Certainly. So first I will ask, are there any in-person comments on agenda item 9? Thank you. If anyone is attending via WebEx and would like to make a comment on any of the updates, you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or you may click on the hand icon to raise your hand, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning. Please do not comment more than once on the same agenda item. Any comments on the executive officer's report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I have 10:06 on my clock right now, so if we can take a 15-minute break, we'll come back at 10:21. And Ms. Walker, if you could let Dr. Little know, we're just a few minutes behind for that. And we'll come back with the CCE update and report. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. Let's move to agenda item number 10, presentation discussion regarding the Council on Chiropractic Education's accreditation process for Doctor of Chiropractic programs and proposed changes to the accreditation standards. And I'm really looking forward to this presentation. So thank you and welcome CCE President and CEO, Dr. Craig Little. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. I uploaded my presentation. Do I need to upload it?
No, you do not. It's actually, if you see, there's a drop down at the upper left saying sharing BCE board meeting and a caret. You can pull down the caret and get to your presentation.
And, ooh. I'm sorry.
If you'd like for me to,
hold on.
I'd be happy to do that for you.
I found it. I found it.
Wonderful.
Thank
there you are.
Awesome.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Paris. It's a pleasure to be with you. It's always a pleasure to be with the California board. As some of you know, I practiced in California during one point in my life for about 35 years. And now I've been involved in higher education for the remainder of that, but I still hold a special place in my heart for those of you that serve and continue to serve. So thank you for all that you do. In talking to Kristen, I really got a sense for what I hope you folks want to hear, but this is designed to be interactive. So I'm happy to answer any question you have at any point in time. And nothing's, you can ask anything of me, nothing's off the table. So I'll begin by trying to advance this. I apologize, I don't do WebEx a lot. Where's the, how do I advance the slide?
In the top center of the slideshow, there should be an 01 with an arrow.
Got it.
There
Okay.
you are.
Thank you. So, I mean, first of all, I just want to go at the who, the why, and the how. And so first of all, who is the CCE? We are an agency that's recognized by the United States Department of Education. There are governmental recognition body, and also we're recognized by the Council on Higher Education Accreditation, which is known as CHIA. And so they are a non-governmental accreditation body. And the difference between governmental and non-governmental, governmental really has a lot of primacy on, you know, some really hard facts on how we do accreditation process and how we implement, and we have to show data to them on a continuous basis on how we meet their criteria. And the criteria is established by the Higher Education Act and implemented through the legislative process. So they have a lot of also hardline metrics that they'd like to see with regards to how, you know, taxpayer dollars are spent, that there's efficacy, and also the accountability that we use to keep programs and institutions in compliance. The Council for Higher Education Accreditation is non-governmental, and they have really more of a focus on student achievement and student achievement outcomes and how we assess educational quality. Both of these entities have criteria, and we have to meet these multiple criteria on an ongoing basis. Interestingly, the CCE is one of only about 17 programmatic accrediting agencies that are recognized by both USDE and CHIA. For example, medicine is not recognized by both. Osteopathic medicine is not recognized by both. And optometry as well is not recognized by both. So there are many other doctoral educational training accreditors that are not recognized by both. We have also been recognized by the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Awards for how we train our folks in going out and evaluating programs. So we had a quality awards on how we train and calibrate individuals to go out and evaluate chiropractic programs. And last, we voluntarily are a member of the Association of Specialized and Professional Accreditors. That's an agency that ascribes best practice in accreditation process. We're very actively involved. I'm the current vice chair of the Association of Specialized and Professional Accreditors. So everything that we do is really operationalized through a lens of compliance with USDE, compliance with CHIA, and through the lens of best practice with ASPA. Now, just to overview, what is accreditation and what it's not. We both have some overlapping responsibilities in this area, both by way of regulation and by way of accreditation. So the role of accreditation is to verify academic quality. So we monitor the student achievement outcomes. We have a vested interest in protecting public interest in higher education and how those tax dollars are spent. The purpose is for a concurrence within the discipline about what academic quality means for that profession, both in terms of process and outcome. And how we do that is by regularly going through our processes and making sure that licensing boards have a chance to talk about what they expect and what they see as far as competency outcomes. And at the end of the day, it's our role to certify that graduates are adequately prepared to safely practice. And that's really the role of the accreditor. We value educational freedom and institutional autonomy, so we don't have anything to do with any specific philosophical or political position. If we're not involved in scope of practice, that's for you folks. You folks define the scope of practice. We do encourage innovation and advancement. It's the role of that because it helps, it's in the public interest to encourage innovation. And we specifically focus on student learning outcomes. So how we do that is, first of all, we develop valid criteria. We do this through a process that I'm going to talk about in a little bit of how we have an 8-year process of developing criteria. So we set these standards and we set them in a way that they're accountable and they're measurable so that we know that each program is whether they meet or do not meet a criteria. We have a process where every program has to go through and do a self-analysis. They essentially create their own narrative on here's what we're doing to meet this specific standard, and here's the evidence of how we're doing it, and here's the evidence that we did do it. They provide that to our agency. Then we send a group of peer evaluators out. Those peer evaluators are practicing chiropractors, their higher education folks, and there are at times some public members that they actually go out on site. We'll send 7 to 8 individuals on a comprehensive visit where they go through and they actually are the eyes and they're the ears of the council, where they look at this documentation and validate whether or not the program's actually complying with the standard. And they essentially form a report that goes forward to our accreditation body on every specific standard and whether the program meets the standard, whether they're actually above the standard and give that program accommodation for going up above and beyond the minimal, or they will cite a deficiency. And if a deficiency is cited, that program is going to get this report and they're going to have to respond to that they have due process where they're able to say, oh, we agree and here's what we're going to do to fix it. Or they have an opportunity to refute and say, we believe we're in compliance because of X, Y, Z. So once that report is finalized by the program, it goes forward to our decision-making body, which we call our council. There are 16 individuals that are elected to the council. Half of those individuals are elected by the accredited programs, and half are elected by the board as a whole. So they make a decision on whether or not the program's in compliance. They look at all the evidence and make that decision. Then we have public disclosure. We cite on our website, and we actually send out an email, the basis and reasons for every accreditation decision we make. That public disclosure will say everything from this program meets the standard to they do not meet the standard, and this is what they're going to have to do, and this is the timeline they have to respond. Or if we give them a sanction. If we give them a sanction of warning is typically a sanction of something that can be corrected in a short period of time. Or we give them a sanction of probation, which means you're in significant noncompliance in the standard. And we're going to notify everyone about this. We're going to tell the United States Department of Education. We're going to notify all the licensing boards. We're going to notify your board chair. I mean, it's very publicly disclosed. Then we have the process of ongoing monitoring of compliance, which we do with programs that have a clean bill of health or those that are under some type of a sanction. Here's how we go through a cycle. So essentially at year 0, that's where we'll go the self-study process. They'll have a comprehensive visit. We'll make an accreditation decision. Then we continuously monitor this program throughout an 8-year cycle. I'm going to essentially every year we will look at a program evaluation and admissions form. We look at that on a yearly basis. Then every 2 years we look at a PCR, which is called a program characteristics report, where the program goes in and does a focused review on things we ask them about, like, what's your strategic plan? How are you progressing? How are you doing on your student achievement measures? What's your program completion rate? What's your board pass rate? We look at all those metrics. We ask them to comment on what are you doing for scholarly activity and research? And so it's a selected report that they have to complete. We also look at their financials at that time. So there's, again, every 2 years we will see this. At year 4, which is halfway through the process, we do what is called an interim report and a site visit. And at that time, we go in and evaluate the program to look at specific areas. How are they doing program effectiveness? How are they examining if their programs are being effective? We look at their student achievement measures, and we also take a look at how they're evaluating competency. We look at their data. We look at how they're evaluating students. We require competency to be examined in a very specific way. We have 31 separate and distinct meta-competency outcomes. We require that every program examine every student prior to graduation, that they've obtained these competencies, and we require best practices and assessment. And a lot of programs have had trouble with this, but we require that every program that they have valid measures and show us how reliable their tools are. And so we require multiple tools and multiple measures, not just one evaluation of evaluating competency of the 31. We expect probably up to 3. And so also every student must be examined by multiple different evaluators. We don't want any type of dove or hawk phenomenon going on. We want to see many different types of evaluation of students. So it's a very rigorous process. We examine this in comprehensive visits. We're also looking at it at interim, because at the heart, that's what really, I think all of our constituencies, particularly our stakeholders and licensure, expect. So, and again, it carries on with the PCR and the peer reporting, and then at year 8, we do another comprehensive visit. So it's a real ongoing cycle of quality assurance. Our site visits are really it's at the heart of what we do, our inspection of facilities. We examine records and review evidence. The purpose of the visit is to really, in the context of the standards, identify, potential strengths and any deficiencies. So we do that by interview, and we do that by looking at their evidence on site. So we'll talk to administrators, we'll talk to groups of faculty separate from administration, we'll talk to individual staff, and we'll have meetings of groups with students. And typically, a lot of things will come out during those interviews. They're confidential. We hold them confidential. We don't report it on to the administration, but it's an integral part of really getting at the heart of what's really, at the heart of a program meeting these standards. Also, we're as an agency, we're trying to be as responsive as we can to profound criticisms that are going on right now with regards to college pricing, the enormity of student debt. And I don't know how many of you on this board are familiar with the average student debt out there, but it's an astronomical figure. And we're trying to take measures that will hopefully help address that problem. Students are coming out of school with baccalaureate loans and with Doctor of Chiropractic degree program loans, and it's not uncommon for those loans to be $250,000 and above, and to come out of a doctoral level training program and then to strive to set up a business and with that type of debt load is a huge burden, and we recognize that as an agency. Our programs recognize that, and we're taking as many measures as we can to be responsive to that. There is inequity in access. The government's concerned about program completion. The USDE doesn't want to spend money on students that are not completing program because we know that those debts are often uncollectible. So program completion and student achievement are huge issues that we're looking toward. There is a rising consumerism by students and their families into, what's the best bang for their buck and how can they go through and get, healthcare education and not break the bank. And there's a growing amount of competition from other post-secondary education providers in all healthcare disciplines. I want to talk a little bit about the innovation that's going on. This was actually when I created this slide and gave this presentation in last year, it was about 30 or 40 medical school programs that were switching to 3-year program. Now it's the vast majority of programs are switching to 2 or 3-year medical schools. And the reason for that is because the program length allows students to shave off a year of educational expenses. And yes, that's tuition, but more often than not, it's a huge amount of living expenses because most programs are located in expensive neighborhoods. And as you know, in California, it's not cheap to live in the Bay Area or in Southern California where our educational programs are housed. It's very, very expensive. So it's a problem for our discipline as well. But that's what medicine's doing. One of the interesting things with physician assistants is that the majority of them are going to online clinical education. And here's an example from the Yale School of Medicine. And obviously, Yale is a very respected medical training program. But they're coming out with their Yale School of Medicine physician assistants completely online. And it allows folks to do their online experience and coursework and then to come together for clinical rotations and immersions on the campus, which is something that's happening very much throughout all types of medical education. Doctor of Physical Therapy programs are very, very rapidly transitioning to accelerated hybrid programs. Here's an example from Tufts University where they have a hybrid program in just 7 semesters. Here's an example from Baylor University where you can obtain your Doctor of Physical Therapy degree by living anywhere and starting your career sooner. It's a 2-year hybrid DPT, and they are getting good outcomes, and their board pass rates are at 98% for 1 year post-graduation, which are good outcomes. And the reason I bring this up is that the regulatory landscape for medicine, osteopathic medicine, for Doctor of Physical Therapy, podiatry, dentistry, they all have a regulatory landscape that's very, very similar. And so it's green throughout the whole United States. And for example, here in California, here's the regulation that's append to the requirements. Medical schools accredited by a national agency approved by the board and recognized by the United States Department of Education shall be approved of the board. So that's essentially the requirements for licensure. There are no granular add-on requirements above or beyond the requirement for accreditation. Very similar, with physician assistant programs. If they're assisted by the ARCPA, they're deemed to be approved by the board. There's no annual, granular add-on language. And if we look toward, I had another one in there, but if we look toward what really we're facing as far as our biggest threat to innovation, are granular, and I know you folks already know this, and I know I'm preaching to the choir on this, but there are many, the add-on regulations that are above and beyond the requirements for accreditation are many times mutually exclusive with our standards and are hampering the ability of chiropractic educational programs to move out of what I would call the 1900s. These regulations were very appropriate before 1975, when there was no CCE. There was a big use, they were completely appropriate. But now they're serving as an add-on threat to educational programs being able to move forward. Most of you know, the problems with the calendar, and you know about the button to seat hour requirements. Those things are huge. And I'm going to tell you, right now, you have the total number of hours at 4,400 distributed over 4 academic years of 9 months each. That's really not, that's mutually exclusive with what's going on out in the real world. Part of this is that all faculty members shall meet the standards of Council on Chiropractic Education. Well, actually, we have all criteria for faculty, for administration, for student services. You could say that just by the fact that you're recognizing applicants from the Council on, or graduates from accredited colleges from CCE. So that's really what I have as far as the problems that we're having, and that programs are having. We're not really having any problems with this, but programs are out there trying to innovate and trying to keep the student loan debt down, and they're trying to move forward. Obviously, they want to keep, they want to do what's right for the best interest to produce good graduates. But these cumbersome additions are really hampering their ability to move forward, and they're at the expense of students. We just can't ignore the magnitude of the student debt issue that chiropractic students are having. Before I switch to the standards, do you have any questions for me on our process or any of these concerns I'm raising regarding innovation, or would you rather wait till the end?
We can open this up to the board. Are there any questions at this stage? Okay, hearing none, we'll open it up for public comment at the end for the full presentation. Thank you.
Certainly. Next, I'd like to go through, the organization, our agency is currently going through a standards review update. It's been a greater than 4-year process to this point in time, where we've gathered feedback from educational programs. We've gathered feedback from people that go out and do our evaluations on site. We've gathered information from licensing boards, and we actually went through and made and developed work groups with regards to certain standards. We had a draft and created that draft and put it out for a 60-day public comment period. After that first public comment period, the council and the standards review task force implemented changes where they could, and they also recommended 3 work groups: one on program length, one on standards for faculty, research, and scholarship, one for our admissions standards and policy 7, which was for our alternative track students. So we went out and did that, and then put those changes into effect in July. The council approved those in July of 2023. and we published a final draft for review in September 1 of 2023, and that ran for a 60-day period. So we did receive a good volume of public comment, and the council is evaluating those, or the Standards Review Task Force evaluated those comments, made suggested edits, and the council is actually working on that this week on approving a final draft. So we'll go forward after that and put out a lot of guidance materials for those changes. We'll have workshops and training for site team members, for counselors, and for members of educational programs. So it's a very comprehensive process. Following the, last year, the first public comment, the Standards Review Task Force made about 19 changes. 15 of those were minor in nature. 4 were not minor, and I'm going to talk about those specifically. And so again, we have those work groups that were formed that I spoke about earlier. First of those is regarding student support. We took something that we required for programs to do to all the alternative admissions tracks. See, we had a policy 7 that allowed students to come in under the 3.0 GPA as long as the program did certain things like monitor their progress and implement policies and procedures and active interventions based on their needs. And we track this data over a period of over 10 years, and we looked at the student success, and we looked at it comparing to whether they were a regular admit student, their GPA, whether they were an alternate admissions track. We focused on watching what are their completion rates, what are their NBC pass rates. We looked at initial NBC pass rates, and we also looked at what were their NBCE pass rates 6 months post-graduation. So we're able to have quite a volume of data to see how students performed. And at the end of the day, we're going to take this paragraph that's in quotations here and implement it into the standards, because all students deserve this type of academic support. So we're quite pleased with having implemented that in the alternative track process, and now having it as a requirement for all students. The next was student admissions. And student admissions is looked at, if you look at this, there's almost a primacy that if a student has a baccalaureate degree at an institution accredited by a USDE or equivalent foreign agency, that they're going to be able to be an admit without any other specific criteria. These are students that have obviously demonstrated the ability to complete a baccalaureate degree, an accredited degree, and have had success. Alternatively, students may matriculate if they have 90 semester hours, and if they have a GPA of 3.0 or if they have a GPA of 3.0 or higher. If their GPA is between 2.75 and 2.99, of those 90 hours, they have to have a minimum of 24 semester hours in life and physical science courses. This fits with the paradigm of what we're really seeing as implemented currently in accredited programs. There are many what we call 3+1 educational programs out there where a chiropractic program will partner with another accredited university, where that accredited university student goes and gets their 90 hours, then they go to chiropractic college, and after their first 30 credits, those will go back to also count back to the institution. They'll get their baccalaureate degree from their original institution, which is a huge cost saving for a student. And so the way that this standard is set up is to help facilitate that process. And there's still an accountability aspect. But in the accountability ultimately always must reside on the educational program, because there are entities that are going to hold the program hold them accountable in certain fashion. First of all, we hold them accountable because all their students, at least 70% of their students, need to complete the program, or they're in non-compliance with our standards. So to admit students and not be able to, for at least 70% of them, and many of our programs are at the well above the 90th percentile, that's an accountability mechanism. Also, we have to, a minimum of 80% of every program student must pass all parts of national boards within 6 months post-graduation. So certain schools may know that, hey, we want our students to have this science or that science, but the responsibility is on the program. Because the program and the institution is ultimately accountable to us, they're also accountable to the United States Department of Education that requires these types of outcomes, because the program's going to have to show to USDE that here's the amount of students that are completing our program, here's the amount that are paying their loans back, and also here's the amount that are actually came out of school and are employed or in making a wages. So all of that has influence on how programs take students into their program. I'd like to crosswalk that with showing you some current admission standards for other doctoral level healthcare programs. The first of these is for medicine. And through its requirements for admission, a medical school encourages applicants to acquire a broad undergraduate education that includes the study of humanities, natural sciences, and social sciences, and confines its specific pre-medical course requirements to those deemed essential preparation for successful completion of its medical curriculum. That is it for LCME, which is the medical accreditor. That is the accreditation standard. And if you look at the second one, it's actually osteopathic medicine. The admission process criteria and prerequisites meets the needs and expectations of the program, period. And so the next one is a component of its assessment plan. The college should utilize an analysis of admission policies and procedures and attrition to select applicants with the qualifications shown to be successful. Colleges should have plans to recruit, admit, and graduate students from groups that are disadvantaged or underrepresented in podiatric medicine. And last is optometry. The program must have a fair and impartial process that results in the admission of students who possess the intelligence, integrity, and maturity necessary for them to be competent doctors of optometry. And again, it's they have an additional that it's equivalent of 3 academic years of post-secondary education prior to beginning the program. Our standards are well above the medical, osteopathic medical, podiatric medical, and optometry, and any other programmatic accreditor that's out there. I know there's concern of some folks regarding, having specific calling out for certain sciences but the fact of the matter is there has to be programmatic responsibility in that. And again, we are shifting our agency's focus not on inputs, but on outcomes. And our outcomes are based on student achievement, student learning, and also competency. So at the end of the day, those are what the agency views as the most important measures. This is our standard H, is really at the heart of clinical education. And there is the parenthetical, there's a requirement for a minimum of 4,200 instructional hours. And now there's a parenthetical for or equivalent under the terms and conditions of CCE Policy 2. So what that means is that there is a way to go toward competency-based learning and what's known as direct assessment instead of being tied to a clock hour. We all know, anyone that's higher education knows that a clock hour does not equate to student learning. A butt in the seat hour does not equate to student learning or to competence. And so we're really trying to make that paradigm shift toward competencies and outcomes. We do have a line in the sand, though, that a minimum of 1,000 instructional hours will be accomplished in a patient care setting. So that means you cannot cut any hours whatsoever under that baseline. We know that now there are a couple of chiropractic programs that are below this 1,000-hour. They will have to raise their instructional hours in this area. The vast majority of chiropractic programs are well above it. Some are in the range of around 1,500 to 1,700 instructional hours. But in that setting, the primacy is on, that's clinical care. there's no way you can cut down on that, but you can go through and you can show competency with a lot of other course outcomes and in other outcomes. You don't have to have your butt in a seat to learn certain basic science curriculum and curricular objectives. So that's where that aligns. There is a new meta competency 6, which is for cultural competency. We had a diversity, equity, and inclusion work group, and really, essentially, this is really, applying, analyzing, and evaluating socio-cultural, socioeconomic, and diversity factors in society and healthcare needs of persons, groups, and populations, along with an outcome to be able to communicate respectfully and effectively with patients of diverse social, cultural, and linguistic backgrounds in a manner that, affirms and protects their dignity. And so really those are those outcomes, and we're quite pleased to have additional outcomes coming forward. And the last standard that I want to talk about is quality patient care, because at the end of the day, it's important for us to be able to regulate what type of care is delivered by our chiropractic programs. And we have changed and modeled our quality patient care standards in a way that aligns with what we saw with what was really well done by dental quality assurance. So the dental profession had similar bulleted points and remodified those in a best practice manner, so that we're making sure that programs demonstrate evidence of using standards of care that are patient-centered, evidence-informed, consistent with accepted industry standards, comply with applicable jurisdictional laws and regulations, and provided in a format that facilitates assessment with measurable criteria. So that means we need to be measuring these things in the clinical education environment. Sampling patient records for appropriateness and necessity and quality of care, because we know that those are very important, not just in, as part of a clinic evaluation, but as part of the student learning process. Thresholds that are set and tracked, so they must be the program must track this and make sure they're improving where appropriate. Mechanisms to address patient response to care and evolve treatment plans, and regular review of instruments used in the training of their reviewers, so that they can assure validity and reliability of the records audit process. So, I'm sorry, and last, we are looking at a new standard for research and scholarship. It has been changed in a way to advance chiropractic education and improve quality of healthcare in clinical practice. So this new standard, that it really expects that research and scholarship includes a plan that leads to outcomes to improve the quality and promote innovation in chiropractic education and advance the understanding and application of chiropractic clinical practice. So it's really because of what a lot have been observing in chiropractic research and scholarship is possibly on a downward trajectory. And we are very, very hopeful that this is supportive of what programs are doing and wanting to do, and that research and scholarship position the program to apply for grant funding that contributes to the advancement of chiropractic education and clinical practice. So at this point in time, I'm happy to answer any question you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Little. It was a very informative presentation, very thorough. Let me open it up to the board members for any questions. Dr. Daniels?
Hi, Dr. Little. It's Pamela Daniels. Thank you so much. That was just really great. I did have a few questions. I was wondering if, what are you finding with all the different schools using different assessment measures and outcomes? What are you guys finding as far as, are there any challenges for you to sort of assess all the different measuring outcomes that the schools are using?
Thank you, Dr. Daniels, that's a really good question. If you go to our website, you'll notice a page called guidance. There's a tab called guidance. We go through there and have many different videos on really what the expectations are, and we also have a white paper that are regarding best practices and assessment, and it spells that out in really good clarity. So the video and that white paper, I think you would find helpful. But I'm going to tell you that it's absolutely fine for programs to have different tools and different instruments as long as they ascribe to the best practice model, which means that it's up to the program to demonstrate validity and reliability. So they have to show us how they know that this tool measures this specific competency outcome. And so we have peer evaluators in there that are looking at it saying, okay, here's what you're doing, and here's what we say you're doing. And maybe those don't align. And I'll tell you, the biggest challenge that we've had, quite frankly, is that we go in at times and we find a tool it has 31 different outcomes on it. It's one tool. And so it's evaluating all the competencies and they're given a score based on that. Well, how would you know that all of these are either, how would you know if a person has a weakness in one, it's not covering up for another? So we do have concerns about clustering at times, and that's a common concern that's been shared with programs. At the end of the day, if they do have a tool that combines more than one, they have to spell out, well, we know that this person has passed this score entirely, and there's no weakness in anything else. So most of what we found challenges with are clustering. We find that programs are doing quite collaborative things with the Association of Chiropractic Colleges. There's a lot of literature out there on best assessment in healthcare outcomes. So there's a lot of tools out there that they can use. There's a lot of medical assessment forms and processes that have been transferred over by many programs. So programs will have different tools, but at the end of the day, you have to demonstrate your validity, you have to demonstrate your reliability, you have to use evidence, and you have to often obviously can't use just one tool. You have to be able to triangulate this to assure, with at least 2 or 3 different tools, that that this person's competent in a specific outcome.
Yeah, thank you. I've reviewed the videos and your white paper. They're all, it's great. Was just more wondering, I mean, you answered it, as far as kind of what you're finding. My other question was on the 1,000 clinical hours, does that, you took out the phrase delivery of patient care. So I'm just wondering, and I know one of the schools had a question as well, as far as the 1,000 hours, does that include observation? Is that when those hours start, or is that when the 1,000 hours is in applying?
It's 1,000 hours in actually applying, for example, but some of that can be due by way of, I'm sorry, I'm losing the word here. Too close to lunch, I think, but not in observation, but in actual with instruments or with virtual tools or with with other types of learning, clinical learning education, where it could be on a mannequin or some other, if they're listening to heart sounds on a mannequin, and there's a lot of virtual things that can be put on where it looks like they're working on a patient. So there's a lot of other tools that could be used, but overwhelmingly, it's really patient care.
Okay, great. And then I was glad that you brought up the inequality to access. The national board was saying that there's problems with inequality or inequity to access to the programs. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more for me and the board members on the removal of the alternative track. What did the sort of study group find as far as 40% of the population do not have a BA or BS degree, and so there's a lot of potential students that come from low socioeconomic profiles that for their marginalized communities, they may not have the highest GPA, And then conversely, say you have someone who has a bachelor in arts, has no basic science, and has a low GPA. I'm just curious to get more information about what your study group found as far as the removal of that alternative tract. And do schools have the option, say someone has a 2.70, they have the basic sciences, because a lot of the schools I know already have implemented those processes that you pointed out for those alternative tracks. So I was just wondering if you could share a little bit more about kind of the metrics and what the study group found.
Certainly. First of all, if you look at our policy 7 and look at the currently proposed standard G, you'll find that we really crosswalked the requirements of policy 7 all the way back into the standards. So we just don't have a two-tier process going on. Everything's included in the standard. So everything that was in policy 7 is already in standard G. Policy 7, the minimum GPA was always 2.75. So, there was a wish at the time that 3.0 be the lowest, but it actually was permitted down to 2.75 to give some latitude for those types of demographics that you're talking about, and programs have been very comfortable with that. And so, I haven't heard anything regarding that we need to go lower than that. I have never heard that at all. What we tracked and what we found over time, it was really quite interesting. What we found that earlier on when we started this, started collecting this data, we did see a disparity between regular admits and alternative track. But then as programs started to figure it out and they started to give students more resources, because we had students come under probation because their alternative track students weren't performing well. So that was a big part of probably early on what we were doing is giving programs sanction, because they weren't doing what they needed to do to make sure these students were successful. Ultimately, those programs, almost all of them, figured it out. So they were knowing, hey, the student really needs this course to be successful before they come in, or we need to give them this during this type of academic support. And so we saw that over time that the regular admits and the AATPs, their data intersected on the line. And then all of a sudden, in certain areas, we actually saw the AATP students outperform the regular admits in many programs. So really, that's what influenced development of standard G, knowing, yeah, we really saw where, the programs are figuring out how to make this work. And so that's why there's kind of almost a three-tier process there that aligns with, many states. Many state regulatory bodies really have primacy on the baccalaureate degree. Many of them require it pre-matriculation, not many, but some, and many required in their regulations. So, obviously some get that in a 3+1, some get it before entry, but it's up to the program to figure that out, because really they're the ones that have to make the student successful. And our data shows that that's not only possible, it's probable.
Okay, great. And sorry, just to hog all the time, but one more question. Can you direct me to, and I love that you added equivalent. And I was trying to find what that definition is in your policy 1,
Yep.
but I couldn't find it. Is that still in development, or am I just missing it?
Right, it's still in development. Unfortunately, we can't develop the policy until this is approved by our decision-making body. So I don't know if I don't have it here. I pull it right up. Essentially, we are going to put into this policy requirements from USDE. First of all, the program is going to have to go through USDE, because they have to prove to USDE that they're equivalent, not just in the learning, but because USDE's it's a fee structure. So USDE is not going to sign off on this equivalency if it's truly not equivalent, because they're putting the money out by the way of student loans. Then the program also has to go through their institutional accreditor. We require all of our programs to be accredited in an institution that is accredited by an institutional recognition body. So in your area, be the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, for example. So that actually would be, that's another set of criteria they're going to have to go through. And then we go through and we monitor and look at it from a competency outcome. What are the tools and they're going to use and measure? And we go through an evaluation process to determine if they can meet that. So it's not a simple application. It's really going to be quite a comprehensive process to prove yes, this is where we can do it. This is how much we can do it. It's not going to be an all or none.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you putting this together and speaking. It was really helpful. And just, you had mentioned it. So just to piggyback on what you said, you are speaking to the choir as far as those add-ons with that were created by the act. And I was glad that you said it was appropriate at the time, because I think it was great at the time, but it is holding the progressive nature of education up. So anyways, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I appreciate it. I was, I'm very familiar with the act. I think the act gives, obviously, your attorney is going to tell you how much, but I mean, the percentages that are spelled out in the act are really not problematic. Tying hours to them is critically problematic. And again, many things that we are already doing and that we're doing, I think that I'm real hopeful that you can rely that we're accountable with.
Yeah, for sure. And we're definitely working on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I see, thank you, Dr. Daniels, for all those questions. You answered half of mine, so that was good. Or you asked, I should say. And let's move to Dr. Sandino.
Yes, thank you, Pam. Yeah, you did cover a lot that I had concerned on too, so that was great. One quick question about, you mentioned peer evaluation, evaluators. Who are they? Is that for your agency? Like who would go and be evaluating? Like, are they evaluating the schools, the students? Just curious on their credentials too. That's one question.
Certainly. That's a very good question, Dr. Sandino. And if you go to our website, we list all of our evaluators on there. So it's under one of the first tabs. I can look it up here quickly, but it's very easy to find. And we have an application process and we have a credentialing process that goes through. And so we seek out individuals from the public, especially, if those with higher education experience. We seek out practicing chiropractors. Many of our practicing chiropractors are actually involved and have licensing board experience. We actually have one evaluator on our academy that has the name of Dr. Paris, and he's been on and can on many different visits and have served in that capacity. I'll leave his credentialing up to you folks. And then we have many different folks that are in regulatory environments. We have other board members from other licensing boards, and we have folks that have been obviously just strictly in private practice. We have some that are in practice, have their own solo practice. We have those that are in veterans administration facilities. We have some that are in other types of medical training facilities. It's very diverse. Then we have higher education folks. We have higher education folks that have experience in finance, those that are experienced in basic sciences. We have those that obviously that are clinical educators. So when we send a team, we send generally around 7 to 8 folks for a comprehensive visit to a Doctor of Chiropractic degree program. One of those people will be a chair. We'll have a finance person. We'll have someone that's a basic science person. We'll have 2 different clinical educators. We'll have a practicing chiropractor. And so all of those folks have been trained and calibrated on all of our standards, but they really serve in the area with their expertise. So the private practitioner is going to be going and looking at the clinic. They're going to be also looking at some of the competency evaluations, but they're going to spend a lot of time looking at quality patient care standards, looking at records, and making sure that the rubber meets the road in a program, if they're doing what they say they're supposed to be doing. And
Perfect.
obviously, and we have approximately 70 different people, so we maintain strict conflict of interest. So no one can go to a program, obviously, that they're employed at, or if they've had any type of application for. We have very strict conflict of interest requirements to keep the process very tight.
Great. Thank you. Because I guess my concern for that was just how to measure the quality of service. That's very important for the, consumers. So I think you covered it. Thank you.
Okay, let me see if there's any more board question discussion.
I had just one more of a curiosity thing from someone that has a lot of overview. I just wanted to ask Dr. Little, I think a lot about, the majority of this profession, the years that this profession has been in existence, nobody needed more than a GED and a high school education. I think up until, what was it, 1975, 76 maybe? So I'm thinking 80 years of our profession, we had some people that, would not be considered and my father is one of those included, even though he had done some college education, and my two uncles. I'm curious if you've ever done a comparison between the competencies and the quality of care that those chiropractors, many of them are still even in practice today, provided with that limited competency, if you will, or experience going into chiropractic school versus what we require now.
I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar with any. That's a great question, Dr. Adams, by the way. It's great to hear from you, but I'm not familiar with any study, but I'm going to tell you, I graduated, I started chiropractic school in 1980, and I believe the requirements at that time were 60 credit hours. And I always wanted to be a chiropractor, and that's what I went, and that's what I got. Ended up getting a baccalaureate degree later, and getting many other degrees later. But I think it was appropriate. It's trying to look at what's appropriate for the time, and I think that obviously we had so many of that great generation that came through and made it. But quite frankly, I think there was a lot of self-learning that went on even after chiropractic school, and we always have to take that into consideration. So, I mean, I can tell you that I think it's that requirements have been progressively increasing over time, which is appropriate for the discipline. I just don't think you want to let that pendulum swing too far to where it doesn't align with anything that we don't have evidence for as far as being, being actually effective. So why put, hurdles in place when we know they're not going to be effective in the outcome of producing a quality, competent, safe chiropractor? And I think we're on a pretty good track. We've spent a lot of time, a lot of resources asking for a lot of input, and we've got a lot of great input. So we've tried to put that to best use, and we're going to continue to do that in our next cycle.
Thank you. Appreciate your response. I think it was very honest and well articulated. Thank you for your time today.
Okay. Are there any other board comments, questions? Hearing none. Dr. Little, can't thank you enough. Really appreciate that presentation today, and I'm hoping we can make it something we do regularly, perhaps annually. So,
Awesome. It's my pleasure. I'm available at any time, and it's always great to work with Kristen. And she can contact me anytime. I'm happy to provide you anything if you need it in written or oral form.
thank you very much. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
And moderator, can we open agenda item 10 for public comment?
Certainly. And first I'll check in with our in-person locations. Does anyone have any in-person comments? All right, thank you. So if anyone is logged into WebEx and has a comment on the presentation, you can either raise your hand and by clicking on the hand icon, or you can click on the question mark icon, type the word comment into the text box that comes up, and then click send. And our call-in users, of course, can press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning, and we ask people not to speak more than once on any given agenda item. I do see a raised hand from our call-in user. So Falcon, I'm going to send you a request to unmute. And that would be *6. You're unmuted.
Yeah, this is thank you. Yes, this is Falcon, student from LifeWest. Dr. Little, thank you for your presentation from the CCE. There were a couple of notes that I have about the edits made for the accreditation edit process. The first note, I'd like to first thank you for your understanding if I've misunderstood the edit, or I am mistaken about the edit, but I think there was generally a part of it concerning wordage that involved the administrative versus the governmental agencies that is involved with the CCE. And I think there, if I'm not mistaken, an attempt to remove the wordage for the government component and just maintain it as only the administrative. I don't know if I misunderstood that. Is it to combine those two separate entities to make it into one? Would that interfere with the checks and balance system between the administrative versus the government? The second note that I have was for an accreditation for H, curriculum, competencies, and outcomes and assessment. Number 3, quality patient care, where it says the DCP employs a system to obtain, evaluate, and utilize data, and will comply with the state and federal laws and regulations and applicable accepted industry standards. I think the edit had removed the words state and federal laws and regulations and replaced it with applicable jurisdiction. And I don't know, it just seems like if state and federal is explicitly removed and not explicitly said and is replaced with applicable jurisdictions, would that go to reason that the possibility to remove jurisdiction from state, remove jurisdiction from federal, if something else takes over? And if that's allowed to be removed, state and federal words, with that same logic, wouldn't it also be logical to remove the word chiropractic and replace it with care? I think some edits that were proposed for the revision should not be edited out, and for words like state and federal to remain in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments.
And this is the moderator. I do not see any further requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just have one further comment before we move on here, that and then open it if there's any others from board members. And if I could request Ms. Walker, if staff, if we might be able to, there were some links and resources mentioned when Dr. Daniels and Dr. Little from Dr. Daniels' question, and if we have the ability to post those for the public.
Yes, we'll distribute that information to the board members and then post a link on our website to just hand out so that the public can access them.
And I think those may help our caller in being able to reach out for any specific CCE questions or to being able to get their contact information to reach out them to directly also, along with, of course, our staff if needed on our end. Okay. Okay, moving, I think we are going to go back again. Let me just remind everyone, that we are planning on a 12:30 lunch break. And so, unless anyone needs another quick bathroom bio break, please feel free, let me know, and we can do that. If not, then I believe we're going to go back to the agenda item number 9 and allow Ms. Walker to continue the executive officer's report and update.
Sure, thank you. So the final portion of my update this morning for the board relates to our budget. So 2 things to cover there when it comes to the budget. The first of which is the meeting materials contain our latest fund condition report. I don't have a lot of new updates when looking at the fund condition report. If you look at, when we're looking at our current fiscal year that we're in right now, 23-24, you can see there where we're still projecting total expenditures just a little bit under $4 million for this year. When we start looking out to next year, budget year 24-25, you see that there's a significant increase there where it then jumps to approximately $5.7 million. That's largely attributed to 2 factors, the first of which is assumptions that we will be fully staffed come July 1. We're working through the recruitment process, as we had mentioned, on many of our positions with goals of getting them filled, some this winter and some this spring, so that getting to that full staffing level going into the next fiscal year is going to result in increased costs to our fund, but then at the same level, some more organizational effectiveness and being able to continue our pace of just addressing all of our mission critical activities, not only licensing and enforcement, but then also all the good work that is being done at the board and committee level. The only concern with looking at that fund balance, and I've mentioned it, I believe in just about all of my updates, is the fact that when we start returning to projections that high up, where we're spending all of our funds, when you look at our months in reserve, you are continuing to see a decrease. So right now we're at a healthy level with about 6 months in reserves. We expect to carry that same level of reserve at the end of this fiscal year. But then as we increase our spending to accommodate our staffing levels, we start to see that slow trickle appear. So the way that we plan to address that is we do have the requirement that was included in our sunset bill for us to prepare a report on our funding levels and our license fee structure to the legislature. We're gearing up for that report to be complete and submitted with our 2026 sunset review report. So in late 2024, early 2025, we're going to have our staff work closely with the department's budget office on conducting an updated fee analysis so that we can really assess our costs and, keeping in mind a lot of our improvements that we've made through the Connect system, just really being able to put updated dollar values on what it costs for us to run various aspects of our program, so we can develop recommendations for what fee amounts should be and make adjustments as necessary as we prepare for that report for the next sunset review. Because like I said, what I meant to mention there when we're looking at months in reserve, a healthy fund generally will have at least 6 to 12 months in reserves. So right now we're 6, we're at the border of being healthy, but when you start looking years out and you start getting down into 3 or less, that's where it's really prudent on us to make sure that we can kind of regrow those reserves. So that's going to be part of that report. We'll have recommendations for the board likely early next year as we start putting that report together that we're going to ultimately include into sunset, but just wanted to put that on everyone's radar. The other portion of my update has to do with the budget letter that I included in the meeting materials for the board. It's kind of well-documented problem right now in California state government of facing a pretty significant deficit, not only this current fiscal year, but then also heading into the next. So what that means for us is that we're really looking at potentially quite a few stringent requirements and spending restrictions over the next 18 months. That budget letter basically directs all state agencies beginning immediately to cut costs wherever we can and then document the savings that we find. We had a meeting with the department on Wednesday where they rolled out some guidance for all the programs for what that means. But generally what it means is take a look at what you're spending, find areas that aren't mission critical, and defer that spending for future fiscal years. They've also introduced a new exception process that we have to go through to basically obtain approval for just about every type of expenditure that we would have, including travel to board meetings. And they've given us direction that things that are not mission critical to our license and enforcement functions, such as attendance at conferences, unfortunately, like the FCLB events, those will not be approved. So it's just our mission critical functions, and then also trying to find just zero cost outreach events. So just a little bit of bad news there as we look at kind of our current fiscal state. We're in a good place this year, but we're just now being told that we can't spend in certain areas. And then one of our other challenges is we already run a very lean program, so trying to find things to cut is also somewhat problematic for us. I've met with Ms. Pitto a few times, and we've strategized here and there. We've got some ideas of ways where we can further kind of just sharpen the pencil, but not necessarily going to have much of a meaningful impact because it's just talking about methods of going a little bit more paperless, streamlining even further some processes, but we're not anticipating any major cuts. It's just going to be more of continuing in a very lean environment for the next probably 18 months. So are there any questions from the board on our budget or the contents of that budget letter? Hearing none, I just wanted to add on to that, when it comes to our board meetings, as we anticipate our plans for spring, the intent is still to find a method to where we can meet in person in San Jose, but we do have to do a cost analysis to justify the cost and also, look for potential savings. So we're going to be strategizing and trying to figure out a way to make that happen. Our backup plan would just be a traditional teleconference meeting like what we're doing right now, if we don't get approval. And also wanted to mention with that exception process, what becomes challenging for us is not only is it raising the bar for what we can get approved to spend, but it also builds in a mandatory 30-day lead time for us to submit and just simply obtain the approval to expend funds. So like I said, I can't kind of hammer home enough trying to get that spring meeting date finalized so that we can kind of proceed with the process of not only securing the approvals for the meeting and building in all that planning time that we're going to need. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. And let me reopen this again for any questions or discussion from the board.
So Kristen, just one quick question. So relative to the requirement that we have as a board to meet at least once in each polar aspect of the state, is that considered then not essential? So the requirement like that we had to be in Southern California last year, is that become non-essential that we can do it via Zoom?
Well, so that's the one outstanding item since that guidance was handed down. It's actually a question that I have for legal, is whether or not when we're conducting meetings in the format that we're doing right now, where there are locations in Northern and Southern California, if that meets that requirement or not. So there are physical locations actually right now in the meeting we're holding throughout the state. So whether we've met that threshold with that statutory requirement for a Northern and Southern California meeting, does that qualify, or does it have to be purely in person? That's the one outstanding item I need to get legal guidance on.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any more?
Selena,
Oh, please.
sorry, I just wanted to chime in on that last item. There will be some more guidance coming out in regards to the new updated meeting laws. So legal will be sending out some guidance to all the executive officers. So hopefully that will be included.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments, discussion from the board members? I just have one, Ms. Walker, and thank you for that. When you were comparing the current year versus the budget year 24-25, and you noted the increase from 3.9 up to 5.7 with the full staffing, was I understanding this correctly that the sense might be that that's a high estimate for the budget year 24-25 based on we haven't done another cost analysis to really capture the efficiencies that we've incorporated over the last year or two or three?
So those looking at budget year 24-25 and further out, that's those are based on assumptions of spending our full cost and our full appropriation amount. That jump of hiring for full staff is an accurate assumption. The only kind of room for that projection to go down would be underspending our Attorney General office line item, which we do tend to do. So right now with that projection of 5.78 million, that would be fully staffed, spending all resources that we have. You know, we generally tend to underspend in that line item by at least 300,000. So a more realistic estimate as we get closer would be closer to 5.5 million, not necessarily 5.8.
So just a minor downward adjustment would be the most we might anticipate there.
Correct. We run a very lean program. We don't really spend on much. We've gone even further to look at, you know, deferring rather than purchasing more large equipment that can be very expensive. Instead, you know, finding more paperless solutions or, you know, leveraging the department's print office. So we've already kind of gone through the drills a few times of shaving what we could. We actually just recently, at the end of last month, even eliminated our fleet. So we no longer have the state vehicles that we have to pay to maintain. We're using just the regular expense reimbursement through accounts. So I mean, we've already done the drill a few times and shaved what we could. That's why we're not anticipating much more left to cut.
And then what about the impact of having a decreasing number of licensees?
Right now, that's something that we're going to incorporate into when we're developing our fee analysis report and just where we need to be to continue our funding. It's been such a steady trickle that right now we're doing just fine with that, but it is something to be mindful as we know that, you know, costs and salaries continue to basically increase every year, but yet, you know, your bottom line revenue is going to continue to decrease, albeit at a slow pace, but decrease every year. So something that we're keeping in mind, and we're going to be incorporating that fee analysis report.
Great, thank you for all that. I don't have any other questions. And hearing anything else from the board, feel free, jump in. No? Okay. Moderator, can we open agenda item number 9 for public comment for the full report too? So if there's any questions to the previous section.
Certainly. So we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment on the entire executive officer's report. If anyone would like to make a comment, let me check in and see if there are any in-person comments at any of our locations. No, okay, thank you. So if you are logged into WebEx, you can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. And if you're a call-in user, you can raise your hand by pressing *3. If you would like to go to the Q&A box, you can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right of your WebEx screen. Click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning, and we ask people to speak once on each agenda item. Are there any comments on the EO report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. It looks like we have planned to have agenda item 11 at 1:15. And so if it's acceptable to Dr. Daniels, would it be okay with you if we jump to agenda item number 12, the licensing committee report?
Sure.
Okay. If not, we can wait and do it in
No,
order. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
So I actually, I mean, you guys have that information in front of you. I don't really have much to add. I kind of gave a bigger update at the October meeting. We're continuing to, we've had several meetings since then, through November, December, and then the beginning of January with some of the stakeholders regarding all the topics of the curriculum, and what we need to do with that, also with the preceptor programs and trying to see what the challenges are, if any, with the schools with the preceptor program and develop some regulatory language around that. One of the suggestions is streamlining the payment process for the interns so that they can get into their preceptor faster using the Connect system. And Ms. Walker can talk more about that, but we'll be talking about that in the March meeting. And then again, just a lot of the work seems to have done. Just everything that we're working on seems to be relying on developing the language. So we do have a work meeting coming up on working on the regulations and getting that language moving. Our goal is to have that to be hopefully presented for the April meeting for the full board. We'd really like to get it done. So that's really all I have. Like I said, we're just continuing to reach out to the stakeholders. A lot of the language needs to be developed at this time. I do encourage that if there's any stakeholders regarding these topics that has not reached out to us, please do so. We've done as much, contacting people and setting up meetings as much as possible, but by no means is it, we miss stuff. So, I just encourage people to really reach out to us at this point. And then I'll just leave it with, if you guys have any specific questions, and then Ms. Walker, if you wanted to add anything as far as clarification on kind of where we're at with all the proposals that we have going on.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Daniels. A lot of work going on in that committee. Ms. Walker, anything to add?
Dr. Daniels summarized it well. That committee, they've accomplished a lot in just really being running for 1 year. There's quite a few regulatory proposals that, they've discussed the issue, discussed alternatives, and they're really kind of, a lot of the regulations that are the newer ones that are being developed are kind of, can be thought of as the model for kind of effectively moving them forward and how to get through the concept development stage, really starting by the discussion of, the current landscape, what the potential problem is, and then solutions as well as alternatives so you can find the best solution that's the least burdensome on everyone involved. And then at that point, once kind of that framework's been designed, then, getting it ready and putting language together so it can be moved forward for the full board. So Dr. Daniels summarized it well. She's done a lot of work with discussing the various proposals with stakeholders so that we really have, heard all the perspectives, and the licensing committee's been able to make some directives to staff to put some language together. So really just want to, again, recognize all their hard work and just let the board know that, yep, we are going to be moving quite a bit of these regulations forward in coming meetings.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me open this up to board members for any comments, questions.
I would just like to reiterate and echo Ms. Walker's comments. Thank you, Dr. Daniels, for your heavy lifting in this area. You've certainly become a subject expert in this area, and you're an attribute to the board. Appreciate all your hard work.
Yeah, I was looking at it and I was like, God, it looks like we've done nothing, but I know we've been working on it. So, I mean, it just seems a lot of this has just seemed like it's been sitting. So,
No, I know it feels that way. And to anybody out there that's listening or watching, we are working hard, and a lot of stuff is on the cusp of going to the OAL, which hopefully will happen to a lot of these things very soon. and it'll feel like I think it's going to feel like a tsunami when it all starts rolling through. But yes, we are, and you have done exceptional work, and I know sometimes it feels like it's watching the sausage being made, but it's getting made.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Adams, I would echo your comments and I would also, recognize that um, establishing the subject matter expertise that you have in this area for us doesn't just benefit the board. It does benefit us tremendously, but not just us. I think the public and the profession and everybody involved it benefits from your expertise here and the work you've done. So thank you very much. Are there any other comment questions from board members? Hearing none. Moderator, can we please open agenda item number 12 for public comment?
Certainly. And we have opened up. Let's check in with our in-person locations. Does anyone have any in-person comments? All right, thank you. If you are attending by WebEx and you would like to make a comment on agenda item 12, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. If you're a call-in user, you can press *3 to raise your hand. And the other option is to look for the question mark and click that, type the word comment into the text box, and then click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning, and we ask speakers to speak only once per agenda item. Any comments on agenda item 12? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving to, let's see, where are we at? I'm checking time here. We have plenty of time. So moving to agenda item, does anyone need a break? Does anyone need a 5-minute bio break? Staff, let me check in. I see Dr. Adams. Everyone's good there? Okay. And board members, if just nod yes if you do, and we can take 5, surely. No, I don't see it. Okay, let me move on. Agenda item 13, continuing education committee report. Again, just an informational update, and I'm going to say that the education committee exhaled a little bit after we started to move the bigger package through last year, and so our last meeting was on December 1st, 2023, and we essentially discussed 2 main items. One was the proposal to mandate basic life support and CPR, and I appreciate the package noting that we engaged in a robust policy discussion. And I think what really is meant by that is we really did discuss every angle and every question and every area of making this decision. So I appreciate seeing that robust discussion in there. And but really there's an issue with ADA and being able to having situations where licensees cannot obtain a full BLS CPR certification. And so we did some background on that, which we had been already previously engaged in, and we figured out that there's actually an advisor card, and we discussed the ability to be able to provide notification to patients that the licensee understands that a provider may not be able to perform BLS CPR, but that they will activate the EMS system. And so staff has taken that. Again, these 2 items at that meeting are both in the concept phase, and so they took those 2 items back to revise the proposed regulatory text, and based on the committee's discussion and input, and so they'll bring that back to us for consideration at our next meeting. And the second thing we discussed was something that I was really happy to see circle back to the CE committee. Um, and that was the proposal to create a process for granting exemptions or extensions to the annual continuing education requirements for licensees who have been adversely affected by a natural disaster, state of emergency, medical condition, or other hardship during their license renewal period. I think I was especially sensitive to having us make sure this comes to fruition, mostly because I was living up in the Northern California Redding area when essentially much of our town and surrounding areas were affected by wildfires. And that issue was actually tabled and last discussed in April 2022, and it was tabled so we could really focus on moving the bigger regulatory package forward. So happy to have this back in front of the committee, and staff did a wonderful job actually bringing us some recommendations that I feel like really made this oops, sorry, I'm in a room where the light is on a timer. Staff did a really good job of bringing this back for us to make this a more comprehensive discussion and have us come out of this with more comprehensive language around these exemptions. And so part of that discussion was identifying additional hardships, temporary or permanent medical conditions to the licensee or their family, and other qualifying events, and creating a process to grant a reasonable extension of time to complete the CE requirements rather than a full exemption. And so we had a really nice discussion about, how that would look and whether it would be an exemption or whether it would be an extension. Um, and then also, of course, creating a process for um, granting exemption or reasonable modification for licensees with permanent medical conditions or disabilities, and rather than requiring them to annually file. So I think this is, again, speaks back to efficiencies, not just for us, but for licensees and our stakeholders. So we had a great discussion, a lot of feedback, and we essentially at the committee level at this stage concurred with most of those recommendations. And so staff's developing the updated regulatory proposal, and they're going to bring that back to us at the next meeting also. And that's all I have. So I'll take any questions or comments from the board. Seeing none, let me just open to Ms. Walker. Did I leave anything out or anything to add there?
No, you summarized that well. We're going to be bringing both concepts back to the next committee meeting for some discussion, and also some text that we think for the BLS proposal the intent is to bring back text that can be then approved, or recommended up to the full board. For the other proposal, the one that was originally tabled in April of 2022, we're going to still be bringing back a concept with some closer language, but likely a little bit more committee discussion before it goes up to the full board.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Moderator, hearing no other questions, seeing none from the board members. Moderator, can we please open agenda item number 13, Continuing Education Committee Report for public comment?
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the continuing education report, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You may look for the question mark icon and click that. Type the word comment into the text box and click send. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on the continuing education report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the Government and Public Affairs Committee report. Ms. Cruz, you
Yep.
have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I think I believe our last meeting. Oh, even louder. Okay. I know, I'm just gonna put you right there. Our last government and Public Affairs Committee was on September 18. Was that correct?
December 4th.
December 4th. Oh, I brought my wrong packet. I was on December 4th. And in kind of that meeting, I believe Ms. Walker had already covered the portion about the fee analysis that's going to be conducted in 24 to 25 year, and just kind of how that then helps us prepare us for our next sunset review. We also discussed the rulemaking process, and just really one of the things we had requested was an overview of that process to better understand kind of where are things, what are the different buckets, what does it mean for them to be the bucket, what are the implications for both board members and staff along the way. And I thought it was such a great resource. I asked for them to also include it in the kind of board member onboarding materials. And so what I'm specifically referring to is kind of agenda item 9's attachment 4, where it shows the whole rulemaking process and the whole process flow. So I just wanted to definitely highlight that. Something out of that meeting, and you'll see kind of in the materials, is that I wanted to acknowledge the 8 out of the 20 pending proposals that have been fully approved by the board, and that will be anticipated to be implemented through the rulemaking process in 24. So just the amount of work all the committees has made, and just what's it called, the amount of work that staff has put in to making sure that kind of we are as successful as we are this past year. We also went through again the board member onboarding procedures and orientation packet. I feel bad because every meeting we have, I add more materials because I was like, no, you're providing us with great insight and great materials. And I'm like, no, this needs to be just a key piece of reference material. So again, the amount of collaboration that happened in the past year, more than a year, to be honest, of putting together the binder of resources and reference materials. And part of our discussion was focused on the electronic board member resource shared folder, what that would look like, the logistics around that, and even if there were board members that wanted to have a DCA email and implications around that of the level of access to materials we'd be able to have. And so I know those are kind of more the in the weeds logistics that are still being worked through, but I want to say that any of, in all progress our committee has made is very much due to staff and Ms. Walker's leadership. Did I miss anything, Mr. Sweet?
No, I don't think so. I think the committee, Ms. Cruz and Ms. Walker and the staff have been working hard, and we've made a lot of progress.
Anything, Ms. Walker?
You summarized it well. Just wanted to provide a quick update on the board member onboarding procedures, orientation process materials, and some of those electronic materials we've been talking about delivering. Those timelines, those are, as far as in the priority list for staff, we've got quite a bit of, we had to redirect a little bit to address the budget issues and being able to request funding approvals where we need to. And also another thing of utmost importance to us right now is filling our vacancies. So I really kind of, between those and getting our regulatory text ready for April, getting packages out, we've got pretty much board member materials are right after that. So anticipating, we're kind of projecting towards the end of the month to be able to release those, if not early February, but they're in the works. It's just being able to compile them, kind of separate out where DCA already covers a certain topic versus where, we need to supplement them with additional materials. There's work being done there, but it just kind of tends to be bumped a little bit here and there as we kind of have to kind of take on some more pressing issues kind of this winter.
Well,
That ends.
thank you very much. I really love the legacy that goes on with developing these materials, and so these will provide value to the board long after I'm gone, and so I really appreciate that. And I said it earlier, but I don't know what it was. Maybe it just made it click in my mind and kind of aligned everything that the board's trying to do. I really like the way everything was is some or most things are all tied into strategic plan objectives, and it just kind of circles me back to that we have a plan and we're moving that forward. And so it's kind of I think it's a really nice reminder. So thank you, and thank you to Mr. Sweet too. So I appreciate all the hard work. Let me open it to the rest of the board members. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Okay, hearing none. Moderator, can we please open agenda item 14 for public comment?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you've got a comment on the report, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Or if you're a call-in user, you may press *3 to raise your hand. Are there any comments on the report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Paris,
Yes.
I think I have plenty of time to give my report before our 12:30 cutoff. So if anybody needs to take a little break for 5 minutes, I think that'd be appropriate.
Sure. I'll take that as a request, and let's take a quick 5-minute bio break. It's 12:02 is what I'm looking at right now. Let's see if we can be back by 12:07, and or maybe 12:08 is probably okay. And then we'll continue with the enforcement committee report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope that was enough time. Uh, let me see. I think we're just waiting for one more board member here. I don't see Dr. Sandino, but maybe she's just not on the video. Dr. Sandino, let us know if you're there. You go. Oh, it was a flash. Can you hear us? Are you on the audio, just no video?
I can hear you. I'm trying. It's not connecting. Oh, there I
Okay.
go.
Yeah. Okay. We can proceed if you're just connecting the video, as long as you can hear us and interact. Okay. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Let's move forward here. Agenda item 15, Enforcement Committee report, and Dr. Adams providing us an update. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. So we met on December 8th of this last year. I think it was the last meeting of the year before the holidays came upon us. We continued our discussion relative to the proposal to update the minimum supervision and training requirements for unlicensed individuals. We, I think, had a pretty strong and robust, use that term again, discussion about those aspects, and got some comments from the public about the importance of making sure that we really take care as to, you know, who's performing those responsibilities and the care and protection of the public in relationship to those that are unlicensed. So I know that the staff and our committee is taking that in consideration and taking those recommendations and requests very serious. We also continued discussion on the proposal to update the record keeping and retention requirements for chiropractic patient records. And we're, I think, moving closer to getting that finished and completed. I think you'll see some of the recommended regulatory language if you all will pay attention to attachment 2 in your packet, which is getting close to the conceptual and regulatory language that we need to move this then to the next step for full consideration by the board, which I think is anticipated to be done at our spring meeting coming up. And then finally, proposal to update the board's disciplinary guidelines and model disciplinary orders and implement the uniform standards for substance abusing licensees. So during the meeting, we engaged in policy discussion regarding the establishment of guidelines for imposing the following terms and conditions for probation when granting a petition for reinstatement of licensure. We've discussed this in the past as a board as well as a committee, and some of those items are listed in your packet there, 1 through 5. Specifically, National Board and Chiropractic Examiners Part 4 examination, where we feel it's appropriate to bring the person seeking reinstatement up to current level of knowledge in relationship to the practice of chiropractic. Also to use the spec exam, to have them retake the CCLE and pass that prior to receiving their license, and passing or taking the EBAS exam, and then having their practice monitored and supervised if is deemed appropriate by the board. So based on our committee's input, the staff is preparing the proposed regulatory language to amend that Title 16, Section 384, and to incorporate the updated disciplinary guidelines by reference and implement the uniform standards for substance abusing licensees for final review by the committee in our meeting coming up this spring. So with that, my report is complete. I thank Dr. Paris and Dr. Sweet for their input and commitment to the committee and moving these agenda items forward. We've covered a lot of ground. We have a lot of stuff that's in the pipeline that we are taking bites at little by little. And those little bites are now starting to stack up. And hopefully here in the next 6 to 9 months, those will be approved into the OAL for regulatory inclusion. And I'll leave it to Ms. Walker if there's anything that she needs to add. Thank you. Or any members of the committee.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Adams. You summarized it quite well. Over a few meetings, especially when it comes to disciplinary guidelines, the enforcement committee has really taken a good approach of going section by section and discussing different aspects, whether it be the types of violations and minimum penalties for those violations, probationary terms, and then our latest discussion around developing guidelines for when granting a petition for reinstatement. Those are all very helpful, and like Dr. Paris mentioned earlier, it really does provide a legacy for future board members by just kind of really leveraging all this expertise, adopting it into the regulations so that then future board members can use it as a tool that's more effective than the current disciplinary guidelines that you have. So really a lot of the enforcement committee's work on that topic as far as discussing the concepts has really come to a conclusion. So it's just really at the staff level right now for us to finalize that language and bring forward a final proposal so that for the committee's kind of review and then possible recommendation up to the full board, probably targeting on those proposals, the July board meeting for being able to hopefully bring final text forward for the board to review on those.
Thank you. I apologize, Dr. Paris or Mr. Sweet, was there any additional comment from you?
Nothing from me. Thank you for your work on it and a great summary.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Adams. It's another busy committee with a lot of detailed work, and I especially appreciate that you're always focused on moving it forward and how can we accomplish, those little one step at a time details, and including it with the continuing education regulatory packages, et cetera. And so I think that's really helpful. There's a lot of work that went on here. So thanks again. And Mr. Sweet, thank you for, serving on the committee as you have too. It's been valuable to have you there. So appreciate that. Let me open it to the board. Is there any other questions, discussion? Okay, hearing up. I see Dr. Daniels, please.
Yeah, sorry. I just had, I was reviewing the agenda item 15, the attachment 2, and I was just wondering if there's some discussion that we could have about that, or is that for another time?
I
think please go ahead, and if it seems like it's committee work,
that's appropriate because then the staff, if they need anything that comes out of the discussion, we can, because this is starting to get the shaping the regulatory language. So if there's anything you have to add, I'm sure that the staff then can do that before we do any final.
Okay. Yeah, great. So, I mean, first of all, thanks to you guys for
my apologies. This is the moderator. It appears that we've lost audio connection in the main room, which means Member Cruz is not able to hear us.
Give me 30 seconds and I reconnect the audio from, I think we lost the connection via Teams. So it takes us
okay, thank you.
30 seconds and I'm going to connect that right now. Would you mind helping me
Thank
to
you.
the phone number from that one?
Take a 30-second break. Yeah, we'll give them a minute. Let's just hold off on.
Right, and then if somebody at the dais board member desk can wave their arms when you're back up and running, and that'll let me know that we can continue. And they obviously didn't hear that if they're having audio
We
issues.
did, and we're trying to, I'm trying to connect.
Okay, okay,
Just
no
give me a
problem.
second. Okay,
Sure.
I'm gonna mute again.
Dr. Daniels, will you be able to complete your question by 12:30?
I think we'll be okay. And just I think also too, if it's, you know, we can, if it's something we can briefly discuss here on the full board, or if it maybe these are question, comment, concern, or you know, whatever, that maybe it just necessitates more committee work. So that's, you know, the other option too. We might raise them here and then let the committee continue to work on those things. Not having heard what the issue is yet, we'll give them another minute here and see. See if we can get everyone connected. I don't see any arms waving.
Exactly.
Thanks, Ann. And I love having you on the calls with us.
You got it.
Thank you, Dr. Perez. It's a pleasure to work with you also.
Thank you.
I saw 6 thumbs up.
Okay, everyone's back. Let's get back to business. And Dr. Daniels, you had a comment, question, discussion for.
Yeah, so I just first wanted to thank the committee for tackling this. I was looking at agenda item number 2, and there was a couple things that I was curious about, where it says patient's gender, height, and weight. The issue of gender and weight is a very sensitive subject, and I'm concerned with sort of compliance, and I'm also concerned with the licensee even asking for those, like if you take gender for an example. So I just wanted to sort of bring up the topic of the sensitivity of gender and weight, and you know, just what language can we have around that one, so the licensee is getting the information that they need, what is relevant, and then the sensitivities to around gender, and nowadays people not wanting to disclose, or even the issue of weight. And you know, the weight was one of the enforcement issues that we had, you know, the difference between being overweight and obese, and height and all that. So that was something that stuck out to me, that I think I just would like that to be looked at a little bit. Also, I think I'm missing it, but I didn't see.
Real quick, Dr. Daniels, just real quick before you move on, did you have a suggestion as an alternative?
I would leave it to sort of, I mean, I would leave it to sort of you guys in like legal, as far as how can we phrase the requirements in a sensitive way that the licensee is complying, and that we're getting the medical information. Like, you know, maybe something that the licensee, you know, if we're taking weight, you're right, and it's a very sensitive, you know, subject, and we feel that that person is going to feel, shamed or, not treated well by saying, you need to get on the scale. Can the licensee document based on my observation, this is what I observed. I've taken this into consideration with the clinical case. I feel, I think there needs to be more around that. I don't have the answer to it. But those are some of the things that came up, like, can they have an option of non-disclosure for gender? If you're making a recommendation, the, gender at birth can matter with certain clinical decisions and differential diagnoses. So those are just some thoughts around it. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
I agree. I think that, most of the forms I fill out these days have male, female, or, care not to comment. And I think that would be an appropriate approach to leave it to the person. And also with weight, I've been in offices where it's given the option to state your weight as opposed to, or I've even seen some EMR systems that allow the doctor to describe the patient, that they are, robust or overweight or underweight or, those types of things. So
yeah, so I just wanted to make sure, like, it's in the language that we're really fully describing, because what's in the current language is that the doctor may put it down if there's a physical reason that they can't attain it. And I think that physical reason needs to be expanded.
yeah. Okay, duly noted. Thank you.
And then I wasn't sure, I didn't see it. Is there no patient signature for each encounter? I mean, because that's an enforcement issue as far as, which we know, and am I missing it as far as each encounter should have a patient at least initial?
I see it under the proposed language. If we look at 4F, the full name and either, that's under documentation of any subsequent patient visits. It's 4F is the full name and either the signature initials of the treating doctor of chiropractic. Were you referring to the patient signature?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
patient, not the doctor.
Is that typically done as sign-in sheet at the front desk? Or
Well,
in the,
nowadays it sometimes that's what I mean. It's not clear to the licensees. Like, we've seen this in enforcement, like, there's, when I've looked into it, there's different languages around, oh, well, you can't have a sign-in sheet because it's not HIPAA. Oh, you can have it because it's just a name. If families and people know each other, a lot of people don't want to sign it because they don't want they know their friend is coming in. They don't want them to see their signature. There's many EMR systems that don't have a place for the patient to electronically sign. I personally am just there's a lot of kind of question around that. And so I just think it needs to be clear, because it's been an enforcement issue as far as, did the patient actually show up for the visit? And so I'm just thinking we need to be clearer so that we're not having these legal enforcement issues down the road, especially with that patient signature signifying that they actually came in for the visit.
yeah, that's a good suggestion.
I know for our practice, we have a form that they sign in that's attached every day. We don't necessarily have them signing the chart note, but we have them, they're signing in to verify that they've been there with their personal signature. So that's something we should discuss further at our next meeting.
Yeah, I think there's also another consideration. Sorry.
I was just going to say, if I'm sure the staff's taking notes on that already. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I think the other consideration too is that there's a lot of like integrated systems and clinics where it's not really feasible to have them sign anything, and they may not be able to do that. But one of the methods, and we can just keep this as part of the committee discussion, is that they'll do a patient identifier, which is essentially kind of an attestation in the note that the patient was identified via their last name, last four of their social, whatever it might be. And that kind of would have the treating doctor stating that they actually identified that patient was in front of them for that visit. And more came out of like, you know, unnecessary procedure or wrong side procedure stuff, but it's typical to do that even with outpatient clinic follow-ups and things like that. So I think there's a lot of, yeah, those are great suggestions. Thank you.
And then I did have under where it says examination and findings, they just, again, when I look at the enforcement cases that we've had and different, you know, legal representations, I just feel like maybe the committee could discuss adding including but not limited to orthopedic and neurological exam that is appropriate to the area of chief complaint. And again, I'm just looking at like there's, you know, this is like a big thing and it looks great. I'm just looking at it from the lens of the enforcement cases that we've had and making it extremely clear as to what is the standard of care and that everybody understands it, everybody's on the same page, and we're not going to have, you know, those problems down the road. So those were kind of my initial thoughts. So thank you.
Good suggestions.
Oh, one last thing. So maybe, Ms. Walker, I got a rubric from a stakeholder on documentation. I thought it was really great. For me, it's always helpful to see something that's done and then it triggers my brain to sort of, you know, fine tune it or whatever. So maybe that can be forwarded if that, I don't know if that's helpful at all, but that was the last thing.
Yeah, we'll share that with fellow board members.
That was good discussion. Those great suggestions. Are there any other comments, discussion from the board members? The final thing I'd say is I think, yeah, that's right on track. I think it's valuable for us to get that back to the committee and let them look at all those things. Probably a combination of some language around medically necessary, clinically indicated to identify some of those, what we want, and then maybe always having an option to note that if the patient declines, you may not have it, but that should be documented as the reason why you don't have it. So appreciate that. Thank you. Agenda item 15.
And,
Yes.
I just had a comment. I just want to let Dr. Adams know. I'll go ahead and send you some of my suggestions as well. What's it called for the second time? But I'm good. Mm-hmm.
We can.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. I didn't hear you very well.
Oh, sorry. I had some suggestions. It aligns with what a lot of what's already been said, and it kind of what's it called? But I'll go ahead and just send it to you separately because the comments that I would have is around kind of if folks wanted to kind of go deeper into the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging lens of things, it would include kind of additional options, but also even just what's it called, recommended language around if you're not comfortable talking about this, right? And then guidance on how to approach that. So I'll send that to you separately.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Moderator, can we please open agenda item 15, the Enforcement Committee report for public comment?
Of course. If you would like to make a comment on the Enforcement Committee report, you can look for the hand and click that to raise your hand. You can look for the question mark, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on the enforcement report? I do not see any requests. Are there any in-person requests from any of our in-person locations? All right, thank you. No comments. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. and we had planned a 45-minute lunch break. And so before we move forward, we're going to return back to agenda item number 11, which was the updates and discussion on the California Doctor of Chiropractic programs. And we will do that in 45 minutes. It's 12:33. And so can we set to come back at 1:18?